Hey, all right, let's talk composition. I think composition is very important if you're trying to come off as professional in your video content. I can't tell you how many times I've seen video made for social media and the framing is all off, or you can barely see them, or the person is placed against a blank white wall, or the camera's angle is all wonky, or so many slight mistakes that scream to the audience, I didn't take the time to plan any of this out. But let's start by talking about exactly what composition is. And the short answer is, it's the strategy for anything that's happening within the frame. Whatever is going on inside the four corners of your video is considered a compositional choice. Now, on its own, it doesn't seem like a big topic to discuss, but us human beings have an innate sense of beauty or things we find aesthetically pleasing. So understanding how those things work and utilizing them in your videos will make your videos stand out and get them more attention. There are tons of different rules or style choices you can make when talking about composition, but for this video, I'm going to go over my top 6 composition rules to get you started. And remember, I use the term rules here loosely. These are artistic choices that you can make, not strict mandates you must adhere to. However, these elements are almost all universally admired, and if you look at famous photos or shots in movies, you'll find that most of them use these rules to some degree. All right, the rules we'll be going over today are the rule of thirds, leading lines, framing, symmetry, contrast, and finally, filling the frame. Let's start with the rule of thirds, perhaps the most popular compositional technique. If you look at your frame and split it into 3 equal sections on the horizontal and vertical, you're left with 4 lines that intersect with each other. This is the rule of thirds, and where these lines intersect are called the hot points. By placing your subject around these hot points, you can create a balanced and visually pleasing image. This technique has its roots in the golden ratio, or the Fibonacci spiral. The golden ratio is oftentimes dubbed as the perfect number or nature's number, as so many natural elements can be found utilizing this ratio. And since it's found so often in nature, it's probably why we find many of these natural phenomena beautiful. But since the Fibonacci spiral is pretty hard to visualize, some people believe the rule of thirds was invented as a kind of half measure and a way to get photographers and artists most of the way there without taking forever to line things up. So place your subject around these hot points and you'll find that a lot of the time you'll come up with a nice balanced image. In fact, I'm utilizing the rule of thirds for all of these tutorials, so if you like the way these look, it might work for you as well. Just remember, it won't work perfectly in every situation. Centering yourself in the frame can also provide a really pleasing look and actually make you look like the authority on a subject. You'll just have to try it out and experiment and see if you like the way it looks. Next, we've got leading lines. If you can pull this one off, you can make some really cool looking images. However, a lot of the times we aren't in environments that lend themselves to using this technique. Leading lines are when you use other elements in the frame that naturally point in the direction of the subject. It's a way of focusing the viewer's eye towards where you want them to look, and when you couple it with the rule of thirds, it can actually be really visually appealing. Sometimes setting up your camera gear on the far side of a table or something with a long straight edge can help you achieve this effect. Just remember to use this sparingly, as it's pretty dramatic and could distract from your topic. Next is framing. Framing is pretty straightforward and has a similar effect to leading lines. It's using other elements around you to frame your subject, creating a frame within a frame. Again, the goal here is to show your viewer what you want them to focus on. You can use an actual door or window frame to achieve this, or utilize other elements that are more subtle. This one can be fun, so look around your space and see if there are elements you can use as a frame. Symmetry. Okay, symmetry is an easy one, and one that most of us are familiar with to some degree. We humans love balance in our visuals. So many famous icons or logos utilize symmetry to give them a very satisfying look, and you can do the same with your compositional choices. Finding a place to shoot where your shot is the same on either side helps to, again, pull the audience's eyes towards the center of the frame and on you. Plus, symmetrical shots can be beautiful, so that initial eye-catching element works in your favor when people are exposed to your video while scrolling their news feeds. Anything eye-catching is a big win for social media video. Filling the frame. This is a super easy concept that I see so many people fail on, and it goes a long way to making you appear professional on video. I oftentimes see people not using the entire frame when creating their content. Their head will be halfway in the middle of the frame, or they're too far away from the camera, or the camera angle is pointed up. Utilize the space you have and maximize the frame's real estate. Position the camera and yourself in a way that you actually fill the majority of the frame so it looks like you planned this out. And finally, let's talk about contrast. Contrast can be defined in several different ways. We can talk about color contrast, contrast in lighting, or even focus contrast. The point is, our eyes are naturally drawn to contrast of all different types. Contrast is even utilized in character development in movies, where one character's personality and traits are very different from another. In comedy, this shtick is called the funny man, straight man routine, and is repeated endlessly in every comedy movie since the dawn of motion pictures. One character is wacky, the other character is sensible. Contrast. Visually speaking though, contrast works really well when you can utilize dramatic colors and a contrast in focus. Focus contrast is when either your foreground or background is out of focus while the other is in focus, and most often it's the background that is out of focus. By creating a blurred background, you're separating your subject from the rest of the frame, creating contrast and making them stand out. You're essentially creating multiple planes in your shot, which, as we've discussed before, gives the illusion of depth, and simulating depth gives videos an immersive and higher quality feel. To create the blurred background, it's best to have a removable lens camera system, like a DSLR or mirrorless camera. If you're using a zoom lens, zoom the lens all the way in and set up your shot so you fill the frame, you're using the rule of thirds or any other compositional choice you've made. Then simply separate yourself from the background and you'll find that the background is blurred a bit while you're in focus. When doing this, make sure you actually have something in your background though, so we can see the contrast. This won't work well if you're shooting against a plain wall. And you don't have to stop at one choice. Mixing and matching these compositional techniques will create ever more dramatic and eye-catching shots. So for this example here, we can see a few compositional choices happening. Leading lines, color contrast, focus contrast, and rule of thirds. Combined, these elements make for a photo that pops and is very eye-catching. The overall goal when thinking about composition is to draw your viewer's eyes to the subject of the frame. And even more broad than that, just making it look like you've made intentional choices when creating your video. If you want to come off as professional, looking like you're trying is pretty important. So just remember, everything that is happening within the four corners of your frame is either a choice or a lack thereof. Try to make everything a choice and you'll find that your videos will look 10 times better than everyone else's. But that's it for composition. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thanks for being here.